Good morning, everybody. Okay. Let's get into it. It is Sunday. Oh, I want to try something real quick. Actually, I want to try a technical thing. Did that? Yes. I wanted to refocus my background. Do you see the setting I'm doing here? Fuzz the background, unfocus, focus. Okay. So I heard that some people like to see all the weird things on my bookshelf, so I'm shutting that off. What are the other? I'll play with these other settings some other time. But anyway, okay. Before we get into the topic, 3 things from the library. Some people may or may not show up today. We'll see. Either way, we're going to be talking about page planning, a topic near and dear and somewhat bittersweet to me. We'll get into that though. But first, 3 things from my library. I mentioned in the past I might be picking different media, sometimes books, sometimes movies, sometimes games, whatever. Got one of each this time. So first, we have for the Nintendo Switch, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I have not played this yet. I'm not allowed to play this yet. This is a reward for when I get to the point of DvsM 2001 where I have a little bit of an opening that would allow me the time to play this game. Now, I was a massive fan of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is the game that came just before this. I've heard great things about Tears of the Kingdom. I picked it up months ago. But again, I'm a busy guy. I'm writing scripts. I'm doing a day job. I have a life. I don't always have time to get lost in Hyrule. But the way I see it, maybe in August and a little bit of September, I will have some time. There'll be a lull in my DvsM 2001 production schedule where I will have time to enjoy the wonders of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'm very much looking forward to it. Okay, so there's that. I don't remember if I showed this already, but I have the 4K discs for Andor. Hands down, not even close, the best Star Wars series of all time. It's so far superior. Without being specific with my shade, the more Star Wars TV I see, the more I think this is a weird fluke. How is this so good when all the others are so mediocre or worse? Anyway, yes, it's on Disney Plus. Yes, you can stream it. But I'm planning on not having Disney Plus forever. I'm kind of hanging in there until Andor Season 2 lands. I will watch that on Disney Plus. And then I will probably cancel my subscription. Too many subscriptions, too many services. I don't feel like I use Disney Plus enough to justify one more subscription. So like I said, I'm going to hang in there, I think, until Season 2 and then bounce off. I think Season 2 is supposed to be sometime next year. I had heard late this year, but probably sometime early, mid next year. And then I'll probably that's enough. So that's why I wanted a backup, because this is something I do not want to lose access to. This was fantastic. Depending on how things go, this might be relevant. Anyway, okay, so let's move that aside. And then finally, from the library, the book library, the very excitingly named ATP 2-01.3. ATP, I'm going to try to remember before I check my work, stands for Army Training Publication. Let's see if I know that. Army Techniques publication. Okay. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of these. This one is about intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Okay. These are manuals that are available to soldiers to increase their knowledge and skill set and understanding of their job. I picked up a few in preparation for writing DvsM 2001, since it's soldier focused. And as part of my prep for the past few years, I've been listening to podcasts by special forces people and things like that. And they all mention like, oh, I would pass the time reading ATPs. So I was like, well, that might be good just to familiarize myself with what those are sort of like. And who knows, maybe I'll find a nugget. Maybe there'll be something in there that will help me give the script that extra little bit of flavor. I didn't end up finding anything like that. ATPs are not mentioned in DvsM 2001, but they're cheap. They're everywhere. You can get used ones all over the place. It was an easy thing to look at, and it was interesting. I mean, it is. It's dense. Like, there is a lot of material in here that if you really were committed to, I want to know everything in this manual. And this is like taking a college class. This is brutal. I can't say I read the whole thing because it was not relevant to me, but also really, really dense technical writing. It was interesting, and I skimmed, and some parts I did read. It was, eye-opener. Like I said, though, I didn't end up getting anything I could use out of it, but it was interesting. It was worth a look just to see in case there would be something. Okay. Those are the three things. Now, today I'm going to talk about page planning, the bane of my existence. So I didn't put them in the description yet. You can find them if you want to. I think for every DvsM so far, 75, 97, and 79, I have a video talking about page planning. If you want to go deep in this topic, I encourage you to go and check out those other videos. Here's the basic. I'm going to try and give you the off-the-cuff Cliff's Notes version of what I'm even talking about. So let's show you real-world example. Okay. Here is the script for DvsM 2001. Okay. It is basically just screenplay format. It's just written like any other, like you'd see a script for a movie, because that's always how I approach it. I don't write Marvel method. I don't write like prose. There's no right or wrong. I'm not advocating this is how you write a comic. This is the easiest way for me to make sense of writing a comic. I write it like a screenplay. Okay. Once I have this, I need to turn this into panels, pictures for a comic. All right. Every part of this, I need to figure out, like, how am I representing this? What drawings do I have to make to tell this story? And so I go through this, usually sitting in the library, and figure out, like, all right, this would be a panel. This would be a panel. I think I'll need like 3 panels to show the sequence. I think this will be this. I think this is like whatever. Okay. That ends up looking like this. I can show you. Here's a blank. I have my backpack right here, so I can show you everything I've been doing. I print out several dozen of these, just normal grids, because I don't know the dimensions of panels yet. I don't know anything about these panels other than I need to start figuring out what each panel will be. What is in each panel? Again, and like I'm going to go very 101 because I don't know who's watching or for what reasons, but just for reference, a panel, we'll look at Frankenstein, the Illustrated Classics Frankenstein. You see this picture here of the monster? That's a panel. Panel is one, not necessarily bordered. You could have a borderless one, but this is one image, like one thing. I'm turning my script using this, a bunch of these. I'm saying there'll be this picture, there'll be this picture, there'll be this. So that's what I'm doing here. These are the panels for DvsM 2001. Okay, I can show you. And I see I have a guest, I'm going to let him in too. So there's pages and pages of like, okay, then there'll be this, then there'll be this, then there'll be this. I think if you follow my social media, my Instagram, you'll see there are 200, DvsM 2001, at that stage, I came up with 271 panels, 271 individual pictures that are going to make up this story. This isn't a number I'm going to live or die by, because as I start doing what I'm doing now, you start realizing like I can kind of combine these. So these two panels could just be one, big one. Or I don't feel like you're following this well enough, this sequence of events. I'm going to break this into smaller ones. So this thing that was 1 or 2 panels is now maybe going to be 3 or 4, like whatever. Again, 271, it's the number for now. It could change. All right, I'm going to let my guest in before I continue with this explanation. Let's see here. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the sexy Scott Lost.
Nice. Hey, that's an introduction that I never
There you go. I mean, you can't beat that. Okay.
No, I can't.
So I'm going to wrap this up real quick, and then I'm eager for you to chime in because I know our processes will be different. So I come up with what at that point were 271 panels that represent the script of DvsM 2000. What I'm doing now, actually there was one more interim step. So this is me, this is just you got to remember, when I graduated from college, one of my first jobs was in an accounting department. So I tend to. Is that what
your major was in?
What's that?
Was that what your major was in? Was it like an accounting?
No, it was, there's a whole windy road that landed me there, but no, it was not my background. I never would have dreamed I was doing something like that. But I did it long enough where Excel became a little second nature to me. Like I'm very comfortable in Microsoft Excel. This, to me, it's useful to think about what's in each frame, but it's also unwieldy, like this big thing of a bunch of pictures. So I usually take those 271 pictures, and boil it down into a spreadsheet. So each of these is what's happening in each panel.
We do it exactly the same.
Exactly the same. I know everybody likes to use Excel and making comments. No, this helps me quick ref, like what are my panels? And what I have here, I'm not going to do it too close because I don't want to do spoilers, but along the top here, these are different characters, and whether they appear in that particular panel, there's like a little X. The reason I do this first is so I can quick reference like what characters in this thing I'm about to draw, but more so, and this is going to come up in a couple weeks when we're on art retreat, if I want photo references of somebody, it allows me to quickly see what are all the panels they're in. What are they doing? Yeah, exactly. What are they doing? And I can very quickly be like, all right, this character, boom. Okay, I'm going to need a 3/4 of them making this kind of face. And I can very quickly go through and be like, I need a picture of this, I need a picture of this, I need a picture of that. Now that I have this and this, what the panels look like, what's actually technically going on with them. Now we get to what I've been doing. I started yesterday, and now I'm going to try and finish today, where I'm trying to puzzle out. So here's a 2-page spread. What would the actual panel dimensions be, and what roughly? These are and this is what I talk about when I say my thumbnails are garbage. Like I am not spending any time making things. You just see like poses. Like the person's looking this way. They're standing here. This person's a little behind them or a little in front of them. They're like carrying this thing. Like that's all I need to know right now. I don't need to get lost in like kind of boulder sitting on. Like, well, how tall are the trees? It doesn't matter. I just need like something like this. And what I'm doing here is trying to puzzle together all my panels and figure out how will they work on a page? What are the wide ones? Like, here's the title page. This will be the DvsM 2001 title. Like, that's going to be on the bottom. It's going to be a wide. But there's like 3 little ones above it. And there's a one long one. Like, it's just helping me figure out, okay, probably like this will be like what's on one page. This will be what's on another page. The main thing I'm trying to think about, the main 2 things I'm trying to think about when I'm doing this, and this is why it's tedious. It's real. I was in the library for hours yesterday, and I only got 23 pages into the comic, which is probably, yeah, it's not bad, but it's
like a
little short of halfway of probably what it's going to end up being. Okay. You know, and that was hours to get just there. The reason it's slow is there's 2 things I'm keeping in mind. I'm looking at this, where I said I put in this all the dialogue that's in a panel, and sometimes I can see this panel needs to be giant because there's a lot of talking, or this panel there's no talking, so it could be small, or you know, like, and I need to think about that when I'm doing the layout. I need to think like this has got to be a big panel. There's a dinosaur in this one. I don't want a dinosaur panel to be this big. Like, I want a, you know, like, so it's like that's going to have to be big.
That's like the money shot panel. The
money shot. This is going to be a 2-page. Yeah, I've got in this one 2 2-page spreads. So I got to know that. I got to know, like, okay, here's a 2-page spread. 2-page spread gets you into page turns, which is another thing I've banged on about. Like, and I don't know if there's a good example in Frankenstein here. But roughly speaking, so here we have the monster chopping wood for the family he likes, okay? This is the top left of the 2-page spread. The page turn logic is you want big, cool panels like this, there to be like a reveal where you're reading, interesting, and you turn like, whoa. Like, right. You don't want this down here, where when you're reading this, you're starting here, but you see this. Like, this is in your peripheral vision.
Right.
You don't want the big twist down here. You don't want the big reveal down here. You don't want the big, like, shock down here, because you're going to see it before you're there. You're going to turn the page and look and like, oh, you know, and you're going to spoil yourself, sort of. You want to try and bury the cool stuff after a page turn, where you're turning the page and you're getting hit in the face. Also, if I'm doing a 2-page spread, it's got to be a 2-page spread. I need to plan it so it's like this, and not 1/2 the page here and then 1/2. Like, I got to figure out, like, how does that fall so you open to the 2-page spread?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at this, kind of going through and marking, this is a page turn panel. This is a page turn panel. This is a 2-page spread. And then looking at all the panels before it and figuring out how to pace them out so I land at the right timing. You know, like, you're going to turn the page and see the thing I want you to see. And not be scrambling where you're reading along, and suddenly there's a page with like 15 panels in it, which is weird for me. And you know, it's like, oh, it's because he wanted to put something on the next page and he's squeezing everything in so the timing is right. You need to kind of work all the way back and figure out, is the pace of this right? Is it working out right? Am I concealing my right hook? You know, like, if I'm going to try and surprise you, if I'm going to try and do something flashy, if I want to withhold something, I need to camouflage that in just the pacing, you know, so you don't see that coming. You don't want to know, like, oh, I can tell just from the way this is going, it's building to something weird, like I'm going to turn the page and something's going to happen. Sometimes that can be good, but usually I'm trying to avoid that. That's what's slow about this process. I think I've said in past videos, this is my maybe least favorite part of the process, because it's very technical and it's very tedious. But, and this is much to my chagrin, it's also maybe one of the most critical parts of the process.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Because
it determines how your book reads, like how it feels, like, you know, the experience of reading it. And if you don't dial that in, it just becomes a collection of Sunday comic strips where there's no There's no ebbs and flows. There's no pacing. It's just like picture after. It's what it is.
It's old school.
Like this becomes the comic.
It's old school 8-panel grids. You know, you think Jack Kirby, it's like he has those dynamic, you know, single page splash when you open the book, the double page splash when you open when you turn the next page. That's what he does. But then after that, it's usually an 8-panel grid.
Just standard. Yeah.
And like me, for the life of me, I grew up, you know, I was born in 1980. I read comics in the late 80s, but mostly 90s. And so I'm used to big splashy images, like different sized panels all over the place. And then so when you go from that mindset and you go back and you try to read older comic books, you're like, what the fuck is this? This is boring. And it's not the fault of the artist. It's the fault of how the art was laid out. Like, and that's part of that time. That's just how it was done back then. So he's following, hey, these are the rules of well, I don't know where my hands are here. The rules of comics. And so it's like, that's why I don't like the rules of comics, is because it limits you, or at least it did back then. Now you know, people are trying stuff and trying different things. But when you have that 8-panel grid, it's very limiting, and you don't know what's more important. So when you have that splash image, that anchor image, and so the word anchor is deceiving in the sense of that it sounds like the bottom, right? You think of an anchor, it goes to the bottom,
right?
So in like modern terms, like the way like Jim Lee and like those cats would use it, it's the image. It is the big image for that page. It's the one that jumps out to you. What's the most important scene on this page? What's the most important panel? And that's the one that needs to be the biggest. It needs to stand out the most, because that's the money shot. That is the most exciting incident on that page.
Right. Well, and with me, you know, DvsM is, I don't know. I don't, maybe this isn't necessarily true, but it feels true, is compared to other books, dialogue heavy. So some of the drama, some of the impact is in what someone says.
Right.
And that also becomes a calculation, is, like I said before, sometimes it's like, well, this needs to be a big panel because there's a lot of back and forth and I need room for the bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I know there's a couple instances in here where a character is saying one sentence, but it's a big, like, this needs to like be like, this is the like trailer clip, you know, of like the person saying the thing.
Where
this
the
is like
this is.
Yeah, well, this is Jaws, where he says like, you're going to need a bigger boat. Like, that should be a big panel with only that. Like, and that has an effect when you're reading. And so there's times where it's like, this is a big line. This is important. So I'm going to do a bigger panel, even though I don't need this room. Like, I'm going to have just character and this one thing they're saying to indicate to the reader, like,
this is important.
You know, look at this. Yeah, look at this.
Yeah,
definitely. In terms of what you were saying about how the philosophy has changed, some of my favorite all-time great books, like Watchmen, V for Vendetta, even League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it's pretty much, if I remember right, just 9 uniform panels. Like through 95% of those books. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. Like, doesn't matter what's going on. And those are great books. It's not like they suffered because of it. But there was no attention being paid to, like, it wasn't a priority. Where I think
to really check out, I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard about it, but there is a Watchmen. It's the making of Watchmen.
Yeah.
And the attention to detail is as tedious as yours is. Like, there is a lot. And I was like, wow, like Dave Gibbons put a lot into it. Yeah. But I think he was just a product of that time as well. So maybe not so much that he's not putting attention to that, but it's like, well, that's how it was done. You know what I mean? Which is interesting enough, because Watchmen is not a how it's always been done kind of book. It's like, hey, we're going outside the box. But in this particular instance, Dave Gibbons decides to stay in the box, which is interesting unto itself.
It is funny because, to me, the idea of writing a story where there's an allegorical pirate story buried in it that's sort of about Ozymandias, like, and you know, you're getting these bits and pieces throughout, woven throughout. To me, that's the most out there, big swing, ambitious, strange thing to do in a book that you could name. So it shows, like, yeah, okay, when it comes to the paneling, you know, normal is good enough. You know, like, it's fine. You know, but
and
then it's like
every one of those pages, by the way. I skipped every single one of those pirate.
So did I. It was
I read
only
the first maybe 2 or 3, and I was like, I don't need this. I don't need this part. Yeah.
Same. I think I first read Watchmen, I don't even know when, in college or something. And I didn't sit and read that bit, the pirate comic, until like 3 or 4 years ago, like relatively recent, where I finally was like, I should read this. But the same thing, like I started reading, it's like, I don't know if this matters. I care. Like I'm more invested in the rest, and I don't need this kind of side thing.
Yep.
It was more out of academic curiosity. I finally was like, okay, I'm going to sit and read this thing.
I think I didn't read Watchmen in general until I think my mid-20s. I finally read in my mid-20s. So, you know, and I'm definitely not. I'm not the norm on this, but I am not as big of a Watchmen guy as most. And I'm like, I understand why people love it as much as they do, and I understand the craft and the skill that goes into it, but it's just not my bag.
Right.
And it's not one of those, oh, I got to read this every year. Like, it's not one of those.
No.
For sure.
I don't feel. Yep. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. Oh no, I was just gonna say it's a little more dense for me. It does feel a little too old school in the sense, like, I mean, you know me, you know, I think relatively well as far as my comic tastes go and like the type of person I am. So it's just like, yeah, that's not my bag, and that's okay. And like, I understand how great it is, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to love it like everyone else. It's like, if you're trapped on a desert island, what books are you bringing? It ain't Watchmen. Not for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you know, if I'm stuck on a desert island, I don't know if that changes what kind of person I am. You know, I'm talking to a fucking soccer ball or something like that. But yeah, it's just not that. That's not for me. So
no, I totally. I mean, I get the impression I like Watchmen more than you, but this was something that came up in our chat. I'm ripping off one of the Red Letter Media guys. It's something I maybe admire more than like.
Yes.
Like I do really respect Watchmen. I don't know if I had, like you were saying, Desert Island, like you can bring one book to read, it wouldn't be Watchmen, you know. Right. But also I think, well, first I think Watchmen it's sort of a era thing.
Yes.
Where when it first landed, it was way more intriguing and exciting than it is now. Now that's not Watchmen's. I see, this is the problem. Watchmen to me has spoiled my appreciation of things like The Boys, where I've never read the comic for The Boys. I think I skimmed it once. I have watched a few episodes of the show. Well done, but to me it's like, yeah, this is Watchmen all over again. Like I already got that. Like, I don't need more Watchmen.
Which is funny because The Boys is more my speed than Watchmen is. It's like, okay,
right.
I like this. This is the deconstruction of superheroes, and that's what Watchmen is, right? As is, you know, like, and also, you know, like Dark Knight Returns as well. It's just like, it's another one of those books where I admire it more than I enjoy it. And much like Watchmen, it's because it's of a time. And at the time, this is groundbreaking. This is doing something different than every other comic book out there. That's why this is amazing. It's very similar to when, like, you hear comedians talk about old comedians. They're like, this guy was a groundbreaker. He did this, he did that. And then you go back and you watch his stuff and you're just like,
it's not great.
Because it's of that time. It was like he was the first of that time, but there's been so many since then who are doing maybe the same thing, if not better. And then they push the envelope even further. And then so what they were doing seems tame in comparison. So that's where I ended up with it, because I think around the same time I finally read Watchmen as I finally read The Dark Knight Returns. And so it's just like, yeah, this is cool. And I can see how this influenced my favorite artists and creators, but I prefer what my favorite artists and creators are doing compared to maybe what Frank Miller did. And not to say I didn't love the way Frank Miller drew. I was like, whoa, this guy, it's definitely different than what I was liking at that time. But I knew there was something special about it. I was like, I really like it. It's not my normal thing that I enjoy, but I do enjoy it quite a bit. And so that was the one part of it that did hold up to me. It's just like, yeah, this is dope looking. I love these images. I love the composition and all of those things. But as far as the story went, I think there was some negatives too that came out of that. And like, we're getting off track here, but it was just like, it kind of, I don't know, it affected a couple of generations of creators so much that like the 90s, they took the gore and the craziness of the Dark Knight, but they forgot like about the other parts, the story elements. You know what I mean? It was just like, it wasn't all, that's not why you guys liked it. It was because what the story was doing specifically.
Yeah.
But then it also, I don't know, I think it tainted the brains of a lot of people. Like I've heard well-known creators talk about like the weird relationship between Batman and Robin. I'm like, you guys are making this disgusting. Like you guys are making it sick. You took this element of the Dark Knight Returns and you're like, yeah, that's Batman. He has a weird fucked up relationship with kids and he like probably has sex. He's grooming them and this and that. And like, it's like, no, this is a superhero story. It's a superhero story and you're making it something that it isn't. And it was just like, this is something you could have made it. And that's what Frank Miller did. But like, now everyone's like, well, it was in the stone tablets. It is written. It is decreed.
Right, this is canon. This is which not really, but
and it shouldn't have been correct. Yeah, it was not a canon story, but everyone took it as.
What that makes me think of is, I mean, I agree. I think I expressed this in the chat at one point in our Making Comics chat, but I don't remember. I think I did. I am increasingly, now we'll see what the MCU does with them, but I'm increasingly of the opinion that when you're talking about something like the X-Men, I would much rather see, it's not that I would rather see, I think they're better executed in animation than live action. That there's aspects of the X-Men that, you know, unpopular opinion, hot take, whatever, just don't work live action. It looks too weird. Like, for example, and here's the example. I've talked about this with Jim Lujan. I, like everyone, would love to see some comic accurate X-Men, you know?
Like costuming and such.
Costuming and their body types and everything. Like, really make them like, you know, how we think of them. Not like, for example, let's just talk about Wolverine. Not over 6 foot tall, Clint Eastwood-esque, Hugh Jackman Wolverine. Like, I want to see a little 5 foot tall, 250 pound, brawny, weird little Wolverine, you know, like that's kind of scary and intense and like a little monster, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I want to see in the yellow suit with the big crazy ears. Like, I want to see that. And I recognize there's no way to do that live action that looks cool.
Well, I mean, I think they're going to do it with Deadpool because Wolverine's in that. So I'm curious. I haven't seen any trailers or anything like that, so no spoilers. But like, I think they're going to do it. They have him in the suit, kind of like in some of the stills that I've seen. It had like sleeves, and I'm like, they're probably going to get rid of those sleeves because Hugh Jackman is jacked as fuck. Like, he puts the jacked in Hugh Jackman, so
he does. Yeah.
You know, so I think that there's a possibility of doing it, and then there's, you know, like X-Men First Class. They kind of did it with the yellow and blue
kind of
jumpsuits. So I think it could be pushed even further. Actually, even Deadpool 1, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, she had the classic New Mutants suit. And I thought it looked
Colossus looked awesome. I thought Colossus looked great. You know, but I would suggest that, for example, if you want to, I remember this came up when Ian McKellen was cast as Magneto, and this was before that first X-Men movie came out, and the internet was the internet then too. People were like, he's too old, he's too skinny, he doesn't look like Magneto, like blah blah blah. First of all, no one would at this point say that Ian McKellen was a bad Magneto. He was an awesome Magneto.
Amazing, because he's an amazing actor. That's what happens.
He's an amazing actor. But granted, he doesn't look anything like comic Magneto. And
like, you can get, I I forgot his is it Daniel Craig.
Yeah,
Daniel Craig would, because
that'd be a
he's an
pretty cool
older
one.
gentleman,
Yeah,
white his hair up a little bit more.
make
He's
him fit.
jacked.
Yeah,
He
right.
is fit. He's amazing. Like I have when I'm doing my dieting and my workout and stuff, like I have a couple of images in my brain that are stored up, and like I'm like, there was the one trailer of one of the 007 movies, and he's coming off of the beach and he's in like a
Yes,
tiny
the
Speedo,
famous. Yes,
like
yeah,
the
yeah,
biker short Speedos, and I'm like, God, looks fucking amazing. Like that's one of the most amazing scenes I've ever
right,
seen. And
right.
then it's the other one is Chris Evans, after he gets the super soldier serum and he's in that white Hanes t-shirt and he looks
Yeah,
amazing. And like those are
yeah.
the
You
two in my
really
brain when I work out, and I'm like, you
sure
gotta get there,
like that. That's the goal, right?
Right.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm going to grant everything you're saying. Yes, you can kind of approximate, but I think the larger thing is you're always risking it looking silly. You're always questioning, like, for example, let's talk about Wolverine's suit. Our understanding of Logan, if we're talking real world Logan, okay, why would our Logan ever put on a suit like that? Like that just doesn't make any, because you're real worlding it. And that's the problem. That's kind of my thought, is like, you can't real world this. Like it immediately starts to break down. And I think Batman is kind of a similar thing, where it's like, if you start trying to rationalize the Robin relationships, the whole thing gets weird. Like it gets weird and creepy, and Batman suddenly becomes the villain because it's like, why would he be endangering these kids?
Yeah,
Why would
child
he be
endangerment.
like, why is he adopting him? Like, what is the deal with Robin? Like, I don't understand. It immediately falls apart.
Yeah. I mean, there's branches of it where you can kind of make it make sense. Like let's say, for instance, right? He does have this trauma. He sees himself in Dick Grayson. Pause. Not like that. But he sees him. He sees, his,
nice. Yeah, a real classic. I see myself in you. I see it every night. Sometimes in the shower, I think about it. Yeah.
So it's a parallel where, like, okay, he's a young man who sees this kid. Hey, we have a parallel life. Our parents both got killed. Yes. I had Alfred, but I also just went off and did my own thing, and that did a certain thing to me. Yeah. So maybe I try to course correct, and like, I'll give this kid the teachings here where he doesn't have to travel the globe and do all of that. And I can become his Alfred in a sense. I can be his replacement father figure.
He needs something.
Right. And it doesn't become that icky thing that Dark Knight made it out to be, where it's a sexual thing. And it's just like, you guys really twisted that shit. Like, why don't we think about it like people that are normal, that just had bad shit happen to them, and they want to either stop the abuse, or you put in that military mindset where it's, I'm training him to prepare for the shit that's out in this world. And then so when you think about it like that, those kinds of people do exist in real life. It's like they put their kids through things because they want them to be tough and to be ready for all of the things that could potentially happen to them. So if you look at it like that, then you're like, yeah, that all makes sense. But when you start doing gross stuff, then that's a little inside you, buddy. You're doing something else.
I think your explanation is the most acceptable kind of rationalization of that relationship. But this is the problem. And again, if you real world, if you have a cartoon Batman, if you have a comic book Batman, if you have a CG animated feature Batman, if you have a Lego Batman, who cares? Like, it's all fine, because you're suspending a lot of, it doesn't have to be real.
Yes.
If we're talking about a real world Batman, I guess the two questions that your model presents are, does Bruce Wayne actually believe his lifestyle is something that should be replicated? And that's a wild thing for him to genuinely believe in his bones, for him to think like, this is actually an enviable life. This is something that other people should be doing. Like, whoa. And second, regardless of his answer to that, Bruce Wayne's answer to that, is that heroic? Does that make Batman a good hero? And I would argue, anyone disagree, I would argue, no, it kind of makes him a bit of a weirdo. Like, kind of makes him
yes.
a
Well,
bit
it's
of a
like,
piece of shit. Now,
yeah,
modern Batman, however people might feel about it, increasingly adds this heaping tablespoon of Batman's kind of a piece of shit, you know? And maybe that's fine, maybe that's fair, but that wasn't always the case in the history of Batman. You know, like there was an actual heroic Batman, not so far. You know, I think Frank Miller, you could probably point to him first and say, like, he first made, like, what if Batman was a nut? You know, like, what if Batman was actually kind of an ugly, weird man? And we've kind of, even the Christian Bale movies, which I love, you know, Dark Knight has that great little subplot where Batman is hacking into every phone in the city to spy on everybody, you know, and even like Morgan Freeman, like Lucius, like the kind of the conscience there is sort of like, no one should be doing this. Like, this is just wrong. And like, so even the movies are recognizing, like, Batman goes too far. Like, Batman he's out there brawling people, you know, in the streets. Like, it's weird, you know, but that's, again, I would argue, only because we're real worlding. If you don't real world it, it's Batman the Animated Series and it works great, you know, like, it's fine. But as soon as you real world it, then you start getting into these kind of silly geek conversations that I myself have indulged in, where it's like, is this the best use of Bruce Wayne's billions?
Right, but then you don't have
a costume and punching muggers in the face. Does this just make sense? You know,
maybe he just enjoys that. Maybe that's his kink. Who knows?
You know,
some people do MMA on the side. You know, whatever they're into. You know, it's like, you're not going to make a living off of that, but hey, you enjoy what you enjoy.
He's a billionaire. He's that guy we've all seen in the bar who's looking to get in a fight, but now he's got $1 billion. Like, that's Bruce Wayne, and it's like, that's not a hero. That's not a, you know, like, but only if you real world him. If you real world him, that's what it looks like.
And debatable, right? And that's like where you real world it, but there needs to be a cap. There needs to be a ceiling on this. It's like real world it to a degree, and then when you the perviness of the Batman Robin relationship, that's when you've gone too far with your real worlding. You've gone too far. So there's a point where you just go, stop it, don't do that. Right. And it's just like, well, what can Bruce be doing with his money? For sure, he could be doing more with his money. Like, it's like, you can address that and still have him be Batman. There's people.
He could be both.
There's people that I've known personally who joined the military, like they're ex-Marines, and they are out of the Marines, but they have an expertise. So they have private missions that they go on, and they do these things still, right? Yeah. And one can argue that's not healthy, but it's also, hey, this is what I know how to do, and I'm very good at it. And so they're doing that still. Right. So it's just like, all right, okay. You know, and like you call that what you want. They're probably killing bad guys. So to them, they're heroes. Right. Maybe in their mind, they're doing the good thing. They're taking a villain out in the world and all of that. Sure. And Batman's beating them up. He's not killing them. So it's just like the idea that Batman can do what the police can't. And I think that's one of the things that the cartoon, as well as like comics over the decades, leaned on, was like, I'm doing the one thing that the police can't do. I'm crossing this line, but to a degree. I'll never cross the I'm killing them line.
This kind of amorphous principled vigilante, like this kind of strange, like, I'm not just a maniac out there.
Yes.
But I'm also breaking the law and ignoring due process, and I'm using violence to advance. Like, I mean, he's doing, he's trying to walk a funny line. Now that is interesting about that.
Yes. And that's, again, the suspension of disbelief. And that's where the cap comes in. That's what the cap is. It's like, we can real world shit and make shit make sense. But then at one point you just go, okay, but also comics, you know? Also, yeah, also superheroes in regards of the movie. So you have to know that whether you're reading it or watching it, it's just like, there has to be a cap on it for you to go, well, this makes sense in this world because I said so.
Yeah.
You know, like a parent from the 80s, because I said so.
And
that's okay. You know, and that's where the line is.
That's what I think I'm loving it, by the way, but this conversation is totally
yes, we're not even talking about creating comics at the moment.
I think that's kind of was Zack Snyder's approach to the material, was sort of like, this is how I see it, this is how I'm going to do it. And he made a bunch of choices that were his, and I saw all the Zack Snyder DC movies, and I think usually at my most kind, I usually landed on that was okay. It's not the version of those characters I want to see, but I respect that he did his thing, like just the same way I respect Tim Burton did with Batman Returns, a very weird Tim Burton-y movie, but I kind of love it. I love it. Because it's Tim Burton's Batman.
Returns feels more like a Tim Burton movie than the first.
Totally.
And I absolutely love every aspect of it. The opening scene with Penguin in the crib and into the river or whatever, and I'm like, this is great. I like all
the character and costume designs. Like it's it's the most Tim Burton-y, and I just love that we got an individual, a very individual vision that's clearly that person, clearly that creator. Like they had all full, and I think Zack Snyder kind of did the same thing.
Yeah.
I prefer the Tim Burton thing, but I totally also recognize both of those are pretty far out there. Like
and then the Snyder one has a huge fan base as well. It's like
they loved it. Choices I didn't love. Like I wanted, and again, it's my own baggage. I'm hopeful about the James Gunn Superman because I want a Christopher Reeve Superman. Like I want a sunny, optimistic.
Yes.
Like an inspirational Superman. Someone that you look at and you're like, he's just a nice guy. Like I want that Superman. Henry Cavill, he was cool. He looks the part.
Looks the part 100%.
Looks the part. And those movies had their moments that I really enjoyed. But like he always was, I don't want a dour Superman. Like I don't want a sad.
That's not who the character is.
No.
That's the problem. The problem with the Superman movies or Superman in the Snyderverse in general is it seemed like Snyder didn't understand who Superman was.
I don't think he likes Superman.
Yeah, the fundamental elements of who Superman is as a person was not in any of those movies. The fact that his father, like Jonathan Kent says, well, maybe you don't save those kids in that. It's like school bus. It's like Jonathan Kent would never say that. What the fuck? He would never ever say those things. And basically kind of going along with it, in the next movie or whatever it was, whatever the case was, I just remember her also saying something similar. Was just like Martha Kent wouldn't say that shit either. It's like no wonder this guy's fucked up because Superman's parents, they're just wholesome, good people, and that's how you raise Clark Kent. That's how
you get a Superman.
Yeah.
You need and Lois Lane also was like a powerfully bad influence in those movies where it's like, what kind of advice are you giving this guy? What kind of like support are you giving this? Like everyone, like it didn't make, I really felt like he just wasn't sure how to handle Superman. Like he just didn't, he never had a grasp on the character. He never liked the things that I think most people like about him. So he kind of like, well, I'm going to make him in a way that's interesting to me. And that was a little too far. It was like, maybe Batman lusts after female Robin. Like it became this thing of like, okay, you're kind of just drifting a little too far now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could tell he really likes Batman, and I have to say, like some of the Batman stuff in Batman v Superman, for my money, it's the coolest Batman stuff I've seen on film. It's very cool. Like
was that the movie that had the opening scene where he was just kind of darting across like in the shadows and no one could see? I was like, this is so okay. You had said you love the Nolan Batman stuff. Yeah. I absolutely did not like Batman Begins because of how Nolan decided to shoot action shots, like the action scenes. It's just he zoomed in and it was a bunch of this and like you couldn't see what the fuck was going on. And his thought process was, I wanted you guys to see what the criminals saw when they were fighting him. First scene, great idea. Whole movie, terrible idea. And then they showed like fight choreography that they were doing to train for that movie, and I'm like, you didn't need any of that because he didn't shoot any of that.
You didn't
So
shoot it.
and so when you saw Batman v Superman, I'm like, that's what Nolan was trying to do, but this is way fucking better because it zoomed out. You can see the criminals going like, what's going on? Like
Right.
you got the feel of what they were feeling as opposed to
that sequence. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think Nolan liked the idea of, especially in Begins, treating Batman almost like the Predator in a Predator movie, where it's like it's this, he's just out of frame, and you're watching people freak out because they don't know where he is or what's going on. Like, I like that instinct. I think that's a cool way to do it.
I think so too. Yeah.
But yeah, the execution. Look, I love Nolan. I love some of his movies. I think I think Oppenheimer was my movie of the year last Making Comics reason. You know, like I love Nolan. I don't think he can shoot an action sequence like to save his life. Like,
everyone has their strengths and weaknesses.
Right. You know, now that opening scene, or the first Batman scene in Batman v Superman, where it's like monster in the house and the cops are going through the house, and like the little moments of like the cops open the cage for the kidnapped people and they like pull it back closed because they don't want to go out there because they know like the weird bat demons, and there's like, that's amazing. This is great stuff. Like, great this details. Is so good. Like, in an alternate, a parallel universe, somebody else was manning the ship of the DCU, but they let Zack Snyder do Batman. Like that would have been like crazy. I bet that would have been awesome. But
yeah.
I still also love that Dark Knight inspired costume Ben Affleck had. Like, I think it looked great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very well done. Hey, I sent you a couple of things to your Facebook. Are you able to open, save them, and share them?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just listening to your process to get the train back on the tracks.
Yes.
Because I have a hard out. So I have two other meetings after this. Fun meetings. Everything is good. Everything is good today. I was just like, okay, I got time for Gary. I'm part of a Filipino-American creator convention called the Phil-Am Creator Con. That's cool. We're setting everything up. So we have a meeting today, and that's going to take place in September. And then after that, I actually have a physical meetup with the Accidental Aliens, which hasn't happened in quite a long time, since quarantine, essentially.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which is pretty wild, actually. So like 4 years we haven't had a sit down drawing, just chopping it up type thing in person. So
okay, is there one you want to see first?
The one with the black square at the front.
Let me share window. Give me a second here. I don't do this too often, so let's see. Present. Share screen. Share window. Share. Can you see that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this is not indicative of my thumbnails, but the reason why I wanted to show this one,
these are pretty finished.
These are finished pages, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this was because it was part of the Drawtober project I do every year in October. And so this is Wanderers number 4. This is page 1 through 7. So this is actually how I do my thumbnails, how I lay them out on a spreadsheet. So I will have the black cube in the top left square, and that is basically the credits page. So this way, my pages stay in double page spread format. So I know when the page turns are coming, I know where you need the double page image, what number pages they have to be on, etc. So this cuts out the thinking part of the process.
You can see my cursor, right?
Yes. So the black square, that would be the credit page. Yes. And then
this image, is the 2-page spread?
Yes. So the splash image on panel 2 there, that's page 1.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that splash image, and then you turn the page, and then then it becomes 2, 3, and then so it always stays in double page format. So the thought process of what page number needs to be the page turn, it's gone. You don't have it anymore because you see it physically. So it's not a detail that you have to pay attention to. And funny enough, this was implemented because of you. You had talked about page turns, page reveals, and all of that, and double page splashes and stuff. And I was like, oh fuck, I've not given that enough thought. and I'm like, and that's something I do need to put thought in. But if you know me, I like to have shit streamlined as possible, so I don't have to do extra stuff like
Sure.
thinking, hey, where's the double page spread happening? It's like, no, I just need to be able to see it. And so like I'm a visual learner, so for me, this is the part of the process where it's just like visually going onto the page. So if you go to the next one,
Okay.
the other image. Okay, the first two pages obviously are finished pages. Those were
Mm.
part of the Drawtober. At least the first one was. The second one was actually me continuing, but I had finished the page, so I threw it onto there.
So here's my quick interjection
Yes.
for
Mhm.
the people at home. And this is a thing where this is subjective. I'm not saying this is the law, this is the rule.
Yes.
But for me, like the fact that you have this big full page panel
Mhm.
on the left, to me is, of course, it has to be on the left. Of course.
Page turn.
Like,
That's
because
page
if you had it on the right, this is a good example of like, you can imagine, let's say these were swapped. You turn the page, your eye immediately hops over this page to go to, like this is the problem. This is why you think about your page turns, to make sure you're kind of
getting those
introducing them in an
reveals.
order that you want the reader to see them.
Absolutely. And you were talking about that earlier, and I was just nodding my head along because even now as a grown up, I still do it. And like
Sure.
creators in comics right now for the big two forever, they're still doing those things. And also, and I don't know if it's necessarily just because it's the page reveal or like a big image, but I still will. I have a habit. I think, and I think you pointed out correctly. If there's a big image on the other page, you can't help but to look.
No.
And like I try to train myself as a kid to not do it, and it still has not stuck. It's like you still do it every once in a while. You can if you're consciously making the effort, then you can force yourself not to, but just instinctively you will glance over and
You
look
can't.
and spoil it yourself.
It's everyone's probably seen this meme, but there's the one of here's the game. Don't look at the chicken. You roll. There's a picture of a chicken, and underneath the chicken it says game over. Like you can't, you can't will yourself to not look at something, especially if you don't even know not to look. And you
Right.
can't be reading. No one's going to read a comic like this, and when they turn a page, just kind of,
Yeah.
like I don't want to spoil. Like it's.
And if you fold your comic over, I will.
Yeah, ruin your comic and read it like that. No,
Yeah.
to me, this sounds pedantic, but this is the way I think of it. And obviously, I care about this because I spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. This is what goes into understanding the medium your art is in. Like if you're doing a comic, you have to think about the physical characteristics of a comic. How is the reader reading your comic? They're reading it this way, they're turning pages. That's part of the art. That's part of the craft, is thinking about that and making decisions based on the physical experience of having a comic, to me.
Mm-hmm. No, you're 100% right, and that's something I implemented because you pointed it out, and I knew it. I've read enough comics to know that your big reveal should be on the page turn, but it was always an extra step in the fact that, well, I'm just laying these thumbnails out, and I'm not really planning when those are. So when I do it and that's why I actually switched to this, and it helped going digital. Obviously, when you're doing it by hand, it's a little bit more different. Because with this, I can move shit around relatively easily. But when you're doing it by hand, your thumbnail is your thumbnail, and you're not really messing with it because, like you said, it's not a lot of detail going into it. So, okay, the first two pages there, the first two boxes are essentially finished pages. The third one, okay, this is something, the first green panel, essentially. Yeah, this is one that I've obviously put a little more time into. And so it's not indicative of my first pass of laying my thumbnails out. Now, if you look at the rest of the pages on this
like
spread,
this one, for example,
this is all indicative of how I do my thumbnails.
Yeah, and this looks similar to my thumbnails. Like it's sort of like this.
Correct. Yeah. And so the way you do things, it adds one more step than I feel that, and like your process is your process, you do it how you want to, but I feel like you're adding one more step that you potentially don't need to do. because you can figure it out on the page. And if you don't like it, now Wanderers is not a great example of panel size, because Wanderers format is you're allowed to do single page splashes, double page splashes, or 4 panels widescreen. That's it. That's Wanderers. There's no different size panels. So if you look at all these, it's all formatted exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because I want it to feel cinematic in the panels itself.
Right.
And it was kind of a choice to go like, I wonder how good I am with composition and layout.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can mess with it and see if I can do different things when I am limited to this. And to see,
in some ways, this is harder to me. Like, if you would think, to me, it feels like if you can, you know what, panels can be any size, and I can have as many panels as I want on a page, from 1 to whatever number you want to pick. That gives you a ton of, like, you never have to make a hard choice, and you never have to think too hard about composition. When you're doing it like the way I'm seeing here, your composition kung fu has to be pretty solid. Like, you need to really be thinking, and I guess the same could be said of Watchmen or V for Vendetta or all these others where it's pretty static. Like, you really need to think about what those panels are doing. And make it work.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a different type of challenge, but it's the reps that you're getting when you're doing your books that make it easier. So, like, for instance, like your initial sheet that you use, they're all old TV size screens.
Yes.
They're all cubes, all squares, right? Like, to me, I'm like, wow, you do them. When the first time I saw that was maybe a couple of weeks ago in the chat when you first started doing them.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you don't format the size of your panel? Like, and to me, it's so wild. I was like, wow, that's crazy. He doesn't think about what the panel is going to look like on the page. And for me, when I read something, I see it in my head as that. So it's just like,
very rarely. Let me show you an example. Very rarely. Let's see. Like, I'll know. Okay, so here's, like you said, I have the TV format. This isn't too much of a spoiler.
Yeah.
This will be a 2-page spread, and I just used it as like, okay, we'll call this page. And I have this highlighting is to indicate to me, like, this is a pan. This is like one big piece, you know?
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll indicate this is a wide one. This is a big one. But yeah, no, it's so early where it's just, I'm not even thinking about what you're talking about. Like, composition, to me, panel dimensions is an aspect of composition. I'm just thinking, like, what's in it? I almost, and I've done this before, can cheat. I haven't done it with this one, but I know it's 79 I did this. I'd be going through this. I knew, you'll appreciate this. Sometimes I know what's going to be in a panel. Like, the car rolls over, you know, whatever. I'm making something up. Okay. I don't really need to sketch it. I could write in the box.
Shoot, I wish I had an example on this one.
Yeah, and
there's one where I just write. I'm like, this is what's happening.
Yeah,
because it's like I am not in the headspace to figure that composition out at the moment. But there's other aspects where I do. Like, for instance, it's like, okay, I read the script. You know, like, Ed will format it. Hey, panel 1, this happens. Panel 2, this happens. Panel 3, 4. Right. And then so I know, okay, I know exactly what's happening in all those panels. I don't have to think about anything necessarily. But because I have the format of Wanderers is simple, like I said, it's all a widescreen format. I get to mess with the flow of that page, because the other step, and I'm not sure if I've talked about it on the channel, but your page itself should have a nice flow and composition. So each panel has its own composition, but the composition of the panels that are related to each other on that page should flow nicely. So for instance, there is, let's look at the first green one. So page 3, that one. All right. So you have those speed lines that are coming down from the top left corner, and they're going downwards towards the billy club in the character's face. So it highlights the character, but it's also directional devices that are bringing you down to the second panel. Now, so when you look at the second panel, the saber-tooth tiger character is faced to the right. So his face is directing you towards the character running towards him. Now, that character's legs are directed downward towards the next panel and to the next figures. So it brings you down to the next panel naturally. Now, this one doesn't necessarily, like, it does a relatively same thing with what is the characters in panel 2. There's a character behind the human running towards the saber-tooth tiger, right? Like, he has a stick, and the stick is also pointing down. So the legs of the human running is pointing towards the billy club of the character on the bottom panel, as is the stick. It's pointing towards that guy, right? Now, if you look at that, the guy, he hits the saber-tooth tiger in the face with the billy club, but his body is angled down to the next panel, and it's angled towards the saber-tooth tiger's body, flowing to the bottom right side of the page. That indicates a page turn. So that's just a different type of thought process that comes into the composition of the page as a whole. Now, so I'm thinking about this all as I'm laying these panels out. It's something I didn't do when I first started. If you go through for my first trade paperback, I don't do any of that shit, because it was I was in my infancy of creating comics. It was too much for my little brain to handle at the time.
It's also a lot of extra work.
It's a lot of extra work, but it becomes, if you do it, if you always do it, it becomes second nature. It's no longer a problem. It's like when you get a new job and they're teaching you how to do it, and you're like, wait, what was that last step? And then you go back and you do it, and then you do it for a month, and you're like, yeah, I just know how to do this now. And then you do it for a year, and then it becomes like you're doing other shit on the side while you're doing that one task. And so when I'm laying pages out, this is all second nature to me. Like, it's just like,
it would be inconceivable for you to not do. Like, you wouldn't want to see a book of yours now, just like I wouldn't want to see a book of mine now, not thinking about these things.
That's why
just so like I'm going to do a bunch of panels individually and then just comp them together later. Like, that wouldn't, no. You need to see. I 100% agree. Like, I think I did mention this years ago in some video. Comics are a weird art form where there's the piece of art that's the panel. Like, that needs to work. Every panel needs to, in my opinion, stand on its own. It needs to be like an acceptable piece of work. That is a part of a page, and I think that page is a piece of art as well. Like, like, if I'm doing an intensely dark panel, unless I'm trying to contrast it with all the others probably need to fit with it, sort of. Like, I can't just do like one that's super blue and one that's super red and one that's orange. Like, you kind of need to figure out how's this all going to go together on a page. The 2-page spread is a piece of art that needs to work. The entire book is a piece that needs to make sense. Like, it's all these little bits that need to marry everything above the larger category above it. So I 100% agree, and that's why the idea of not thinking about it's going to be a disjointed mess,
right? And that's what's like, that's what tripped me up about your process with the TV screen one. And I'm like, but you can't see the whole thing as a page in itself. And that's where I was kind of like, whoa, like,
that's where this starts to
and see, that's where I would go straight to that.
You would go straight to
Yes, because again, I'm thinking of the page as a whole piece of art. Like you said, the whole page itself is an art form, and then each individual panel. So I need to see how those work in conjunction with each other. Now, if I did it panel by panel, I wouldn't necessarily be doing that. Jim Lujan, he is not in his car, which I don't believe. I just need to share that with you because it's special.
And yet there's no evidence.
There's no evidence of it.
Yeah, we don't know that for sure.
I don't. Okay. All right. That's okay, buddy. I don't believe you.
I think the main reason I'm doing that, you're absolutely right. I could jump straight to this. The reason I'm reluctant to, I guess I would fear that I would start doing this, get to a point where I realize, oh, I've got a page turn coming up or a 2-page spread coming up, and I didn't pace out my panels right. So now I have 3 pages from now, for example, I have a 2-page spread, but I only have 4 more panels to play with. So I'm going to either have two giant panels on 2 pages just eating up time, you know, till I get the timing right, or I need to go back and like repaste this out so I end up in a more organic way where I want to be.
I would say the solution to that potentially. Is your scripts done? Like,
yeah.
So that should be done already. So you should know the pacing, because do you have them broken down per page?
No, I don't know pages until I finish this. I don't even know how long DvsM 2001 is until I finish this part.
Okay, so that's where.
Because right now I'm going through and I'm taking all these and saying like layout, 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 layout.
Okay, interesting.
And then when I finish it, like, apparently 2001 is this many pages. You know, like that's
okay.
Yeah, this is all.
So writer Gary doesn't break the script down per page as he's going. That's the difference. Yeah. So I was running into, you know, so okay, so that, all right, that clears everything up, because when we first started doing this, me and my writer, Ed E. Bronson, he would write prose and I would read it. And as I was reading it, I would draw right on the script and I would draw the panel out. Right. Yeah. And I would do the same thing. I'm like, I kind of see this as this type of panel, this, like, okay, it's a tall vertical panel, right, you know, and then these ones are going to be, you know, rectangles to the right of it, you know, so I'll kind of visualize it as I'm drawing. Right. Or I would just kind of draw the panel. Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily put it on the page. I would just draw the panel out. So very similar to your process right now. Yeah. And then I would do all of this, and then I would organize them onto the page to get the flow of the page right. And then I would do this with the whole book. And then I would end up with 28 fucking pages. And then I would go, Ed, I can't, I'm too slow. I can't do 28 pages per book. I can't do this. This is way too long. I'm like, we need to fix this. You need to let me know how many pages this story is going to be. You got to let me know, this is panel 1, this is panel 2, panel 3, etc. And then that way I'll know this book is 23 pages. Right. And then as I'm doing it, I might go, you know what? I think I can stretch this scene out more. Like if he paced it in a way that I'm like, I think this deserves a little more time. I would give it another page or two. You know what I mean? I would tack on then. Yeah. And you know, and then so that's kind of our process now. Yeah. So, but the initial one is basically what you're doing. And for me, it was too much, because like, whereas you're good with your book being however long it needs to be, I'm not. It's just like, no, we're on a single issue schedule here. I need to keep this, like, I'm paying for these bitches. Like, we're doing them at a far more rapid pace. Like as opposed to you're like, you know, you'll take a couple years to do your book. Right. For me,
and it's like, going to be longer, and you know, like I've resigned myself.
Yeah, mine's 20 to 24 pages. That's what my book needs to be. So, you know, we'll design it accordingly, as a where yours is kind of like this giant story arc that you're going through. So it's like you have more room to play, whereas I'm kind of like, I'm on a deadline, I'm on a page restriction. We kind of need to stay within these guidelines. So that all makes more sense now.
Yeah, and I usually can, once I know my panel count, I can ballpark how long the book will be, because I know my typical, like what my average, how many on average panels do I have on a page the way I approach a story. So I usually can kind of like, it'll probably be about this long, but there's lots of variables, and that's not something I get. I'm never going to like do the math and make an announcement on my channel. Like, this is probably how long, because I don't know. And there's enough examples from past DvsMs, like, for example, I think 79, the most recent one, had something like 30 fewer panels than 97. But it was 2 pages longer. So there's kind of a, who knows? And I know why that was. It's because I fell in love with the idea of doing a bunch of 2-page spreads and large pages. Like, let's show Opie, you know, the dinosaur, one giant page. Like, I did a lot more like, let's do a big page. Let's do a big page. Let's do a giant panel. I was starting to enjoy that more, especially compared to 75. 75 is my, I think, most conservative, where it's pretty much 6 panels to a page, 2, 2, 2. And it kind of goes like that. There's once in a while you'll get a full page or a wide panel, but it's pretty much 6 panels to a page. And as I got a little more confident, it's like, okay, let's be a little more ambitious with the panels. Let's try and push. And I tried that more with 97 and then even more with 79. That's why it's hard to say. And I know with this one, right now, so far, the math is about what I would have expected. But I know I have stuff coming up in the back half of the book where I want to do big panels. And that's going to throw my math off. So
there's certain pages like the OP big panels, those are absolutely needed. It just makes sense. Like when you're like, this is what people have been waiting for, is to see some fucking dinosaurs. It's like we saw the Martians and their bots. I'm waiting for I'm waiting for the D. Whoa.
Give me the D. Whoa. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, no, totally. And I was just having this conversation with Jim the other night, without saying clear of spoilers.
Jim, I'm also looking forward to hanging out with you, by the way. Sorry, I didn't get to respond to that. I was in the middle of a sentence. Yes, it's going to be fun.
I was joking with Jim, like, we should brand this both on Artcaster Zen and Making Comics as the crossover of the century. Like, because it's basically going to be both groups, like all in the same. It's going to be crazy. But there are things, especially in the back half of this book, that are large or dramatic. And like I alluded to earlier, you can't do that in a panel this big. Like there are some things that demand this should be a big panel, or at the very least a tall panel, like something to really show like scope or scale or whatever. So again, makes the math crazy. But then keeping that in mind and knowing like I don't want to do, first of all, I have a limit with Comics Wellspring Saddle Stitch. There's like
75
or 64 plus interior pages or something. Yeah, something like that. So that's the absolute limit. I don't want to hit the limit, but like that's my limit. Knowing that, well, I know I want to do a bunch of big panels and big pages. When I have the opportunity, I need to pack some in, to try and like keep, so I have a buffer, So if I can get away with 9 panels on this page, I should do it because it'll give me more room, later on.
Yeah, to play with that space. Yeah. Hey, I actually got to take off. I got those meetings. It was so much fun doing this. I always enjoy these conversations.
Yeah, no, this is good. I'm glad you made it.
Definitely. And that all makes sense as far as your process. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense why he's doing it then. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. My own personal convoluted way. So. Yeah. All right.
Awesome. All right. See you later, dude. I will see you in the chats.
Yes. Right. Cool. All right. Scott Lost, everybody. Go and check out, you saw the link. He had it. It's Accidental Aliens. Go check out his work. He's a great creator. Buy some of his books. Sign up to make sure you catch future Kickstarters, all that stuff. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much covered everything. Today, I need to finish doing this. Or if not finish, at least make big progress where I'm close to finish. It is miserably hot here. I tend to work on this in a local library just because it helps me focus. There's no distraction of like the cat or just check my email or watch a YouTube video or whatever. Like if I remove myself, I will sit and be focused. I can just put on my headphones and work. But it's like, it's Phoenix in summer. It sucks just to go out there, and even in an air-conditioned car, just to drive someplace is just miserable. But you got to do it. Anyway, hopefully it'd be great if I could finish this today. Maybe I can if I push, and I'm focused. I have a lot of day left. Let's look at the calendar and see what's going on next. Okay, so next time is the 28th. It is the Sunday before the art retreat with Scott and Keith and the Artcasters group in California. Scott Cirkland and I will be flying into Ontario and go into Keith's little, it's not a cabin really, but like a place in the mountains, and we're going to all just set up for the weekend and work on whatever. Everyone's bringing something to work on. We're going to be working on our things. My intention is to be taking reference photos of Scott Lost and Josh Kemble, who I'm using them as references for 2 characters in DvsM 2001. So I'm trying to get all my work to a point where I can do that. That's why I'm trying to stay on track. Once I have this, I'll know more or less what my page count is. I'll know more or less what kind of work I have ahead of me to draw this book. I'll be able to see if I need any changes or tweaks, or if I need to rearrange anything or cut something. Once I'm settled on, like, okay, this is what the comic looks like, then I will basically be doing an updated Excel spreadsheet, adding the information of this is a big panel, this is a small panel, this is a full page, this is whatever. I'll know that stuff then after I do this. And this, as I alluded to earlier in the video, will allow me to make, basically to print an Excel worksheet that just tells me, these are the photos I need of Scott. These are the photos I need of Josh. These are the photos I need of Marcus or Donnie, or like whoever else I'm enlisting. So when I sit for a photo shoot, and I always try to be, look, people are doing me a favor. I buy them lunch, I give them a free book, they get a thank you in the book. Like, it's not like charity, but I also respect their time, and I know they're not models, and it's a kind of an awkward, it's a strange situation. I try to be efficient and focused. These are the X number of photos I need and want. I need you from this angle, make a face like this, make a face like, pretend you're holding this rifle, blah, blah, blah. Great. Like, we just race through it, and it's fairly painless. This is a lot of why I'm doing all this right now, to get all prepared to be able to be doing that in August with my references. My hope is to have taken pictures of everybody I need to take pictures of in the month of August. I'll be starting August 2nd or 3rd with the people at the art retreat. And I'll be doing that off and on with different people, probably for the rest of the month. That, by the way, is when I will have the window to play Legend of Zelda, because I'll just be mostly working on scheduling people for a couple hours to take pictures. Otherwise, there's not a lot for me to do because I'm not ready to start drawing. My hope, however many pages this ends up being, I've already said my hope is to have the next DvsM out next year. It will be late next year, almost regardless. The question is how late, and that will depend on how long of a book it is. Is it late next year, like September? Is it late next year, like in time for Christmas? I don't know, but I'm hoping for some, it'll be probably like Q4, probably. Right now, DvsM 2001 is looking like it will be about as long as other DvsMs. I'm expecting it will be somewhere like 50 to 60 pages, somewhere in there. Page a week, 50 to 60 weeks. If I start drawing this year, you see, like, this is how I'm coming up with late next year. My hope is to be starting to draw the comic, starting page 1. Well, certainly by October. Certainly, like, at latest October. But it'd be great if I could start sometime in mid-September or something like that. Like, that would be nice. That would give me, I would feel like I was on a good schedule if I could start. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's like September, October, starting to draw. And then after that, it's just running the drawing machine page a week. There are other things I need to get figured out before I start drawing, but I can't, they're spoilery, so I can't really talk. There's references I need. Not photo references like people, but like I need to do some concept designing, and I need to maybe do some SketchUp modeling, and I need to do some location scouting, because there's always real world stuff. You know, I want to get like, I actually want to go to where some of this takes place. There's the stuff I need to do, but none of that should interfere with the goal of starting to draw October latest, sometime in October latest. So that's where we're at. So I'm hoping next time we talk in 2 weeks, I'll just be putting together lists of photos I want to take of Josh and Scott. That should be all I'm thinking about. Because that coming weekend, I'm going to California. So I should be at that stage where I have the whole book planned out. I know how many pages it'll be. I know what's in every single panel and what page every single panel is on and what it looks like. And now I'm just checking off boxes and getting my ducks in a row to start drawing. Okay. That's all I've got this week. Hour and a half. It's a respectful time, especially with a guest. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Yeah, that's that. Hope you all are having a good weekend, not reading too much news. And if you're creative and you're working on your own individual projects, I hope it's going well. Talk to you next time.